So we can be very thankful for that. I'm your Master of Ceremony. Some of you know me from the Gig Harbor Republican Club, where I served as president for a couple of years. My name is Richard Samuelson. Let me first of all welcome you here heartily. Please find a seat wherever you can. And Marlon, please sit in the front row. So we're fortunate enough to have Mark Riches here, Pastor Mark Riches, to start us off with a prayer. Pastor Riches?
Thank you, Richard. Let's pray. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the confidence of knowing that you, as the Creator God, is sovereign, and you're sovereign over the affairs of human beings. And we thank you for all the blessings that come from you. Lord, we also thank you for the establishment of government, which you have designed and which you have orchestrated and which you have made a part of humanity. Lord, we thank you for those that are our legislators. We thank you for our governors. We pray for your wisdom to be unleashed upon Jesse and upon the other legislatures, upon our governor. We pray that your wisdom would be released along with your compassion. We thank you for Jesus Christ and for the model that he has given to us in living life. We thank you for the love that he expressed in his death and resurrection. We thank you for the confidence that we have that love extends to us. We pray that this meeting would be one of peace and purpose and order, information. Lord, we also pray that you would just guide and direct the direction that Jesse takes as a result of this interaction he has. And we just thank you again for all that you've given to us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Pastor Riches. We'd now like to do the pledge, and fortunately we have Charlene here to guide us.
Everybody please rise. If you were prior military, you have the option of saluting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Wonderfully executed. By way of the structure of this meeting, many of you have attended these before. Jesse is happy to take any questions. We'll leave about an hour for questions after the formal presentation, the formal update. So whatever comes to mind, he wants those questions. He wants to entertain your questions, and please feel free to speak your mind. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our 26th District Representative, Jesse Young. Please welcome him.
Good morning, everyone. Pastor Riches, thank you. Charlene, Christian, thank you so much for saying the pledge. You know, I always start these events with those types of ceremonious types of things, because people don't realize that that's how we begin every day in Olympia. Every time we're on the floor, pastors from around the state will come. They're invited by different members to lead us in an invocation. Ideally call down some higher power to help us work on your behalf. And we also honor and post the colors every single day. I was just fortunate. Where did my daughter Angela go? My daughter Angela just got a chance to page for me, and we bring pages down all the time, and they get a chance to go through a week-long curriculum. And usually they post the colors for us. And on certain days, we'll have the National Guard come and do it. But it just comes back and helps to remind you that there's a broader sense of a dignity and something we should aspire to in terms of how we work together. So I like to edify that here. And so Pastor Mike Riches, thank you for praying. I just want to thank every one of you for coming out today and being a participant. I'm going to give you a legislative update. It's worth noting that this is a legislative update only. If you have questions or you want to make a comment about something that happens during November when we all got to go to the ballots and stuff, please feel free to reach me some other time and talk about that. This is meant to be my reporting back to you. You're the boss, you elect me, And one of the pledges that I've made as a representative, when I was appointed in 2014, in this room actually, I made a pledge to everyone. I said I would be more transparent than any other, than any other legislator. And if you elected me, I would come back before you and maintain account. And since that time, I've had more than double any other legislator represent these types of forums. I also maintain an office full-time here in Gig Harbor. Marine staffs it full-time. I think the only one in the state that maintains 2 offices. Now, that office here I pay for myself, but I don't think you need to drive to Olympia to have to try to get a hold of me. So down in Olympia, Eleanor, are you in the room? I didn't see where you sat. There she is. Eleanor, if you could stand up for a second, she's going to get mad at me for highlighting her, but Eleanor is the staff down in Olympia, and then when we come back in district, Maureen and Eleanor both work out of the Gig Harbor office, which is right by the Goodwill. So if you ever want to stop by, swing on by. You get 2 lovely ladies, the best mom in the world and the sharpest lady that you're ever going to see in Eleanor, and I don't know, it's better to probably talk to them than it is to me. They get things done. So with regard to how the legislative process works, let me lay a couple ground rules. I'm going to give a little bit, and then I'm going to start asking for your direction on where you want to go. I mean, I really think that this report should be dictated by you. I'll give an update, and like Richard said, we're going to leave a lot of time for Q&A. We never script here. You get, Richard will bring around the mic. You get to ask your full question. We ask that you try not to take 10 minutes when you're asking your question, but I'm going to engage your questions, unscripted, unfiltered, and then I come off candid. And I think that works well. I think that's the way politics should work. You should expect that I don't filter what you're trying to ask of me because, again, you're the boss. And you should always remember that. I think any politicians that start to forget that are probably time to move on. In this case, I'll give an update, and then I'm going to pause for a second, and I'm going to ask you if you'd like me to maybe go this direction or this direction. I want to give you the update that you want to know about, and then we'll let the Q&A dictate the rest of the time that we have. The secondary thing I would ask is that I try to answer every question 100% completely. I may not give you the answer you want, but I'm going to directly answer it. And so I like some audience participation. If you think during the time that I'm asking the question, anytime you think that I'm ducking the question, if you think that I'm trying to steer it another way, just start slipping your hand up in the air, and that'll be my cue that you think I'm going off, and we'll pause and we'll try to get it corrected for you. So at the end of the day, every question gets answered, and everybody leaves here knowing whether they truly like how I represent you or not, because I think I owe that to you. So with that said, I'm going to take a drink of water real quick, and we'll get going. Okay, so how many of you have been to these before? Can I see a show of hands? Okay, so you're familiar with me kind of going through this. I think I saw less than half the crowd, so I might go through this again. Hi, buddy. He raised his hand. Thank you for coming. Okay, so this is your portal to Olympia to understand what we're doing. And I've always found that people seem to appreciate knowing how much information is at your fingertips. When I got down to Olympia, you know, I saw the tools that they gave us. And then I thought to myself, well, these are tools that they give us, only legislators get them. And I wonder, it was just a random thought. I'd never thought about it before I got down into office. And I got down there and I thought, well, if these are the tools they give us and this is how I learn to legislate, is that going to create a divide between what I can do and how I operate versus your oversight of me? So I made a decision. I said, I'm going to attempt to try to do my job with the public tools that are available. And the thought process being that if I can't do that job, then you can't oversight as well the way that you should either. And then I would use that knowledge to try to correct what's available online. And what I found was that I could do my job just as good or better than any of the other legislators that are using the other tools that are available. All of the information, I was really surprised to see, all the information that we have at our fingertips is available to you. So I exclusively use these resources. I don't use the internal resources. And because I don't find that I need to. Everything's available here. And so now what it's done is give me an opportunity to show you how you can access it. So the first thing I'm going to do real quick is, this site is, if you see the web, just hit the back button, please. Yes. Yeah, do we have the ability to turn down some of the lights, I guess, in the back? Is the gentleman still here that does that? I see some light switches on the other side of this pole here. You can't see them, but on the other side, right there. Maybe those can go down. Well, we will try to do that. So I will walk you through what we're doing. Thank you for noting that. I guess we'll see. There's also some switches over there. Maybe those will work. We'll see what we can get in here. We'll get it nice and cozy. How's that? Can you see a little bit better? Anybody see any light switches on that wall behind those columns? Maybe they'll get those ones off. Okay, so all you got to remember is a very simple thing, leg.wa.gov, ledge.wa.gov, and that takes you to the governmental portal that we use. I start my day out on this page every day. Now, the nice thing about this is if you can highlight right in the middle there, Mom, right where it says today, right there, that button, if you drop that down, you can pick any legislative day on our calendar that is to come, and you can find out what we're doing that day. And so if you were to go to, say, Monday, which would be, what, the 25th? 24th, thank you. It'll tell you that we're going to be in the House caucus at 10 a.m. You've got some of the committees that are happening in the Senate. You can see what agenda they're going to see or what they're going to process, what bills they're going to do. If you can scroll down that list, right in the middle there on the right-hand side, there's a little bar. There you go, right there. Scroll down that guy. And keep going. So now you'll see what I'm doing. I've got House floor action earlier in the day for the caucus, and then you got House transportation, which is starting at 3:30. And we've also got Commerce and Gaming. I'm on that committee. That comes at 1:30 p.m. So it looks like I'm starting my day with some budget meetings in the morning. That's not on the calendar. That's one of the things I do on transportation. Then I'm going to go to the floor. We might hear a couple bills. And then we're going to go into committee because right now we are in a process where we're hearing Senate bills. And so there's a lot of stuff on that. There's a lot of stuff going down there, and it's all available to you. If you were to click on the agenda for transportation, so the second row at the bottom there, click that agenda. Nope, that's the Senate. Go one up. Sorry, I should have clarified that. H and S, yeah, someone saw that. H is the House. Those are the public hearings that we're going to be hearing on bills. And it looks like that's all we're doing. Now, we have a light agenda today because I know what we're going to do after that. We're going to go back into budget negotiations. We're trying to figure out the budget. So the chair, the ranking members, and parts of leadership are going to go to negotiate budgets. But my point being, all of that's there. Now you say, well, what's that bill? Exempting previously registered vehicles from the stolen vehicle check fee. If you click on that bill, it'll tell you what it is. Can you click on ESSB? Okay, hold on, don't click it yet. I'm going to ask a question. Can anybody tell me what ESSB means? We'll give a prize for that. I'll figure something out. Maybe. What's that? Close. I think two of you almost got it together. Engrossed substitute Senate bill. Engrossed. So, believe it or not, if you really want to understand, and start putting your hands up if you think I'm going too long in some of the kind of the quirky history, but if you want to understand everything that we do in the legislature, you just got to close your eyes and think back to the turn of the 20th century, right when we got in the 1900s. Think about how they had to process bills. Think about how the technology they did not have. And you will start to realize that everything that we do, the types of forms that we have, the structure that we follow is exactly the same, just with modern technology applied to it. So when we click on that link, I'll show you a little bit of bill history, and you'll see exactly how this plays out. But effectively, back then, when somebody had a bill, he had basically a written draft. Maybe they had it typed up, but you had one draft of the bill. There's no photocopier. There's no printer. You had one person, so let's say I'm there, and the rest of you are the rest of the body, and I've got a bill idea. Hey, man, I really want to, today you'd say, well, I got a bill. Would you like to sign on to it? Would you vote for it? And he's like, well, send me an email with the link, and I'll read it, and I'll tell you what I think. They didn't have that. He's like, well, can I see a copy of the bill? And I've got one copy, man. Don't spill any coffee on it. Don't mess it up, because I need to give it to you next. Well, that's the scenario that they had to process through. And so when a bill would come up, what they would do is they would go to the floor of the House, and they would have, when it's introduced, they would have what's called first reading. First reading is the first thing that happens for every bill. We still do that today. Every bill that is dropped and presented for the body to consider is read on the floor of the House. And it happens, you can see it on TVW, but we've all got lives to do. And they do it really quick. We have expedited rules, but that process is still followed today. And so that back in the turn of the century, well, I guess 20th century. We got to make sure. But back then, before we had all the sophisticated technology, they would literally get every member of the floor on the floor of the House, and I would give that bill to the clerk, and the clerk would literally read the whole thing so everybody could have an idea what the bill was. That's why it's called first reading. And that's how you knew what was in the bill. They'd have rules that would then say, well, we're going to sit for a little while, and now that you've heard what the bill is, it would be stuck or placed on the rostrum. They might have additional clerks that might make a couple of copies, handwritten copies, so that different members could see. And that and any other bills that they read on first reading were all read. They're stuck up on the rostrum, and then members could come, and they'd have a few weeks to consider amendments to the bill, and then they would draft those in handwritten form. And then what would happen is after a few weeks, they'd bring that bill up again for second reading. And second reading is the point on the floor where you try to amend the bill. And so they would literally do the type of pasting jobs that we would do in elementary school, where they would, if I liked part of your amendment, I might, and we accepted it, I would cut it out of your draft and paste it onto the bill. And they're putting this kind of collage together. And after everything is amended onto the bill or not amended onto the bill, we would finish second reading, and it would sit for a few days or for a few weeks, and the clerk's office would then redraft the entire thing based off of how the floor amended that bill, with all the, cut out this part, put this part in there, draw lines, make little arrows, and it would all be officially recorded, and then we would come back for a third reading a few weeks later, and then they would read the bill again, this time in its completed form. And on third reading, you're not allowed to amend the bill. On third reading, you just get to vote whether you want this bill or not in its amended form. And then if the bill passed, if we held a vote and you said yes, we want a 50% plus one vote voted to pass it out, it would go over to the Senate, and it would go through the same 3 readings again, same process. And then if it passed the Senate and they didn't change it at all, so the Senate passed the exact version that the House did, then it would go to the governor. If they changed it, it comes back to the House. And at that point, the two bodies would have to, the House would either A, have to concur with the changes of the Senate, or they would have to not concur, and then they would go into conference, and they'd try to figure something out, and then they'd see if they could get a bill passed. That is still done today. And so when you changed a bill on the floor of any of the houses, they call that engrossed. It's now engrossed. Now, so that's why you have the E there. What happened? All right, if you can try to log that back in, maybe your computer went to sleep. So the engrossed substitute, now, so we don't have just that simplified process anymore. What do we have? We also have committees. And so we have committees because we process thousands of bill suggestions every year. And we divide up into kind of a team type of philosophy, and each member is assigned to different committees. And so if you don't know, I serve on transportation. I always have, and I'm now in leadership on that committee, and we help write the budget for the transportation committee. Okay, do you have the other? Okay, we'll get there. Next, so I serve on finance, which deals with all the tax policy in the state. I serve on commerce and gaming, which deals with gaming. The liquor and cannabis board would deal with everything from liquor to marijuana and the regulatory rules over that. And then I also serve on commerce and college and workforce education. Yes. Commerce and gaming, and then college and workforce development. And the average legislator serves on 2 to 3 committees. I like to stay busy and kind of geek out for you, so I serve on a little bit more of those. Okay, so all right, we're in a general committee. It's a different committee here. Which committee is this? This is energy, environment, and energy. So I guess you can just click on one of those random bills. There's engrossed substitute Senate bill 6473. If you click on that, now you've got this page. Now this is available to you all, and it gives you every piece of detail that you want to know about a bill. So now I kind of transitioned off of the floor, which is if we amend a bill on the floor, it's engrossed. If a bill gets amended in committee, it's a substitute. That's where you get the E and the S in front of this bill. Now, if you notice, the bill is just referenced as Senate bill, but when she clicked on it, and you can see it, You see it right up here, the ESSB 64. That's for the engrossed substitute bill. So what that tells you, it's information it's telling you. What that means is that when the Senate considered this bill, it went to a committee, and in committee, they substituted it. They changed it. And then it got to the floor. They voted it out of committee. It got to the floor of the Senate, and then they changed it again on the Senate. So it got the E stuck onto it. So it's engrossed. Then they passed it off the Senate floor, and it's now in the House. And in the House, it's going to be considered in one of our committees. And this little nice GUI graphic here shows you. So you can see in the Senate. Mom, can you highlight that with your mouse or something where the little lines are in the Senate there? So you can see it. It was introduced. And so that dot for introduced, that's when it was put on first reading, and they literally read it in the Senate. Then it went to committee. They processed it in committee. The committee deep dived into the bill to really look at the policy. They passed it out of that committee. It went to the floor. The Senate was then put on second reading. And then they amended the bill again on second reading, and then it was eventually put on third reading, and then they voted it out of the chamber of the Senate. Now it comes to the House, and it goes through the same thing again. And we literally are honoring the same tradition and following the same rules that they did. We just have technology to help us now. And if you were to scroll down, this is all available to you. If you were to scroll down a little bit on the page, you can see the history of the bill. And this won't look so scary anymore when you start seeing all these comments. So stop when it gets to bill history at the top of the page. Okay, so what does it say? Look, on January 17th, it tells you when that bill was introduced and it was on first reading. So you can read that first line there. And then what happened? After first reading, it was referred to the Labor and Commerce Committee. Yeah?
This is a fabulous system, Jesse. What comes to mind? How in the hell do you get anything done?
Well, that's it. So did everybody hear the question? Okay, so the question was, with this a fabulous system, but how do we get anything done? Well, we spend a lot of hours down there, that's for sure. The truth is, well, let me ask you the question. Maybe, does anybody know what our prime directive is down there? We have to accomplish one thing and one thing only when we're in Olympia. Does anybody know what that is? No, close. Close. We have to pass the budgets. That's the one constitutional thing we have to do. Well, taxes to the point of government. I'd like to think that I would reduce them. But yes, so you're kind of right. But the taxes in our body we consider different. We have a different committee from that than we have for the budgets. But we have, and does anybody know how many budgets we have? 3. We have 3 budgets. Yeah, you've been here, Gordon. You're cheating off of last year, I think. So we have 3 budgets. One of them is transportation. We have another budget. The main budget of the state is the operating budget. And then we also have a capital budget. So when I'm talking to your city council here, and I'm talking to your mayor, they usually come to me and they talk to me about the capital budget. Because it's in the capital budget that we give money back. We work with local cities, and they're asking us, hey, can you help us fund this park renovation, or can you help us fund this initiative that we're trying to do in the state? Can you give us a tax break here so we can get some local development done? We're talking about that all the time. And now, does anybody know that the city lobbies the legislature? Do you know that? Every city in our district lobbies us. They all have, actually, Port Orchard and Gig Harbor hire the same lobbyist. Bremerton has a different one together. The county has their own lobbyist. Kitsap County. It's a lobbying extravaganza, believe it or not. No, I think, actually, you know what? I didn't take a chance to recognize elected officials. I see Councilmember Tracy Markley is in the room. Thank you, Tracy, for coming. And I see school board member Natalie Wimberly in the back. Am I missing anybody? I'm trying to pick out faces that I see. Anybody else that's elected? Okay, well, Tracy can tell you. Now they may have passed. I think they passed or signed the contract before you were appointed. But I think you pay about Gig Harbor pays about $75,000 a year for Gordon Thomas Honeywell to lobby for them. Now, Gordon Thomas Honeywell is one of the bigger lobbyists in the state, lobby groups in the state. Guess what? This is all stuff you have to figure out on the fly when you get down to Olympia. But they also do federal contracting. Gordon Thomas Honeywell has they're a major lobby firm, but also a legal firm. And they do a lot of work in terms of helping the local government go through the whole morass of bills, regulations, grant opportunities, everything else that's at the federal level and at the state level, and they try to weed that out. And as a matter of fact, so I was appointed in this room. I was sitting right in that corner over there, and about 5 minutes into being nominated, I got this nice little touch on the back of the shoulder, and I turned around, and there was the lobbyist for Gig Harbor introducing herself to me, saying, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you about a few things," and off I was into politics. So, okay, so back to this. By the way, so I'm going to pause for a second. Would you like me to quit off of this and start going into what we've been voting on, or would you like me to consider this? Because we got plenty of time. I'm not going anywhere. I see one hand saying they'd like me to go off. The rest of you, you want me to go on? How many want me to continue finishing this line of thought? Okay, I'm seeing about, all right, okay, I see about equal hands, so I will quickly go through this, okay? So the bill history shows you that it basically went through first reading, went to committee. The bolded lines show you when it passed out of committee. And then you can see under the bolded line, if you want to know how your representative is voting, it will tell you. So on that first bolded line, you will see it reads, LBRC majority, first substitute bill, so there's where the substitute comes in, is be substituted and do pass. And if you click on the majority report link at the end of the sentence there you go, boom. It tells you which senators voted for that. So if you close that down, and then beneath it, you don't need to click on them. Beneath it, you'll see the minority that voted to not pass it and the minority that voted without recommendation. Both of those are considered no votes. But the bill passed, so that tells you that there were more yeses than nos. It passed, it moved on, and then it made its way. And if you look down there on February, so it went on January 28th, if you see that line, it went to Rules Committee. I will let you ask, because I'm going to move past this. If anybody wants to know about what rules is, it's purgatory. I'll explain it to you, but you got to ask me in Q&A. If it makes it out of rules, it then goes, and if you see right there on, where is it? February 13th, you see where it says second reading? Now we're back on the floor of the Senate, and they're doing what we used to do 100 years ago. Okay? So now I think you're kind of slapping your head. Now let me be clear. They don't read the entire bill anymore. Normally when they read it, they go into pro forma, and they'll bring all these bills up to second reading, and they literally go through the motion, and they'll have maybe 20 bills that have made it up to second reading. And while the rest of us are off doing our work, the Speaker Pro Tem, or in this case maybe the Lieutenant Governor, whoever he designates in the Senate, but on our side it's the Speaker Pro Tem, will go to the floor, they'll gavel in just for a few minutes, they'll have the clerk start to read these bills, and then he will expedite it by saying last line. So they'll start reading all the bills, and he'll go last line, they skip right to the last line, and then they gavel it down, and we're done.
All this stuff is stuff in these bills
No.
that we don't know about, that we don't know about.
I can see, Mike, why you'd be concerned, but they can't do anything there. They're just honoring the tradition with that, because they can't move that bill off a second reading until the entire body's there. The expectation now is that they don't need to read it for the whole body, because we have a link to it. We can just read the bill ourselves. So that's second reading. And then you can see on February 14th, what did they do? First, so it was brought up for second reading. They then amended it on second reading. And then they moved it to third reading. And you can see that in the lines there for February 14th. And then on third reading, they passed it. 41 yays, 6 nays. And if you wanted to see the roll calls, you could click on that, and it will show you everything that everything that they did. So now what happens? It moves to the House. So scroll down, and I'll jump off of this real quick. Okay, so this is still in play, by the way, right? This is still in the House, and so it moved to the House. It was put on first reading again in the House, referred to a committee. It's been heard in committee on 24th, so they considered the bill, and when they hear a bill in committee, that's when you have an opportunity to come down to Olympia and chime in. Yeah. I will cover that in just one second. Yes, so the question was about ghost bills, and I won't miss that. I'll come back to it. So now that bill, if you were concerned about this particular bill, on February 24th, you had the opportunity to go down and testify on that bill. And now, what have they done? So February 25th, on Monday, and on Wednesday, the 27th, the chair of that committee is telling you that he might vote on that bill on one of those 2 days to advance it out of committee. So that's what's happening with this bill real time, which now the nice thing is that on this page at the top, don't scroll up, but on the top of the page, if you want to be notified of all the action that is taken on this bill, there's a button you can click, and it will ask you to put in your email address, and it will email you. It will tell you every time a new action is taken. If you want to stay on top of these bills and not miss a dang thing, it will do that. It gives you that option, and you can select the frequency with which you want to be notified. It's a pretty slick system. Now, if you want to see how this bill has changed, this is engrossed substitute Senate bill, which means there was an original draft. It made it to the committee in the Senate. It was substituted there, so here's your second draft. And it made it to the floor of the Senate. It was changed again. There's your engrossed. And if you look at bill documents, you can see all three. The original bill, how it was changed in committee as a substitute bill, and then how it was changed on the floor of the Senate as the engrossed. Please don't click on it. Well, I guess you can if you want to see it. Just click on it. It's not super scary, but you'll see the current. That's the current version of the bill, engrossed substitute. And now you get to see all the fun language. Okay, so now, if you scroll down just a tiny bit, and sir, I'll answer your question about ghost bills. Okay, right there. Stop. The line number 4, being enacted. Okay, everything before that line is the title of the bill. Okay, everything below that line is going to be what the bill is intending to do. Okay, now, sir, you asked about ghost bills. When they run a ghost bill, everything above line 4 is present in the bill. And the subject of the title of the bill doesn't have to be 3 lines like that one is. This bill, obviously, an act relating to asbestos-containing building materials. And that's really the effective practical title. Then they've got the nomenclature for referencing the law that is in current status. But that's the title, an act relating to asbestos-containing building materials. The subject or the body of the bill has to fit within the title, or the scope and object is what we call it, of the bill. So you can't have content in the body of the bill according to our single subject rules on the Constitution. You have to fit everything under that title. But if you make the title really broad, like if you say an act relating to taxes, you can put any type of tax in there you want to. If you say an act relating to the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, you can't put anything on it about the 520 floating bridge. Right? It's got to be single subject. And so what they do is we craft titles to try to get you some specificity. The thing with ghost bills, and the ghost bills that we were hearing last year, especially on tax policy, was that they did that. They actually put language in that said an act relating to new taxes. And then in the lower section of the bill, there was nothing. Below line 4, it had one line on line 5, and it basically said the same thing that the title said. There's no language in the bill. Yeah, you should rightfully freak. There's no transparency in that. Well, what's the plan? The plan was that they would post that bill out there, and they would post it early so that it passes transparency laws. Well, they can say it's available to you. Look, we didn't run this bill. We didn't hastily process the bill. We posted it for you to see. But that's all you can see. So actually, do me a favor. Go to the second tab up there, bill information. Click it, please. So type in 2167. So the first thing you see about 2167 is that entire graphic is filled in, which means that bill has passed. It went through the House, it started in the House, passed the House, went through the Senate, passed the Senate, then after passage it went to the governor signed it, and it is now law. That was passed last year. So now I'm not going to go through the bill history again. I've kind of showed you how that bill was processed. Other than I might click on something here. So you can see that in the House on April 26th, it went to the Finance Committee. I'm on the Finance Committee. If you click on the minority report, do not pass, you'll see I voted against this as the ranking minority member. Okay. So now close that down. Let's scroll down. Now, if you want to see how we passed on the floor, you can see the third reading on April 26th, the line that says third reading passed. Click on the roll calls. Okay, so you can see that this bill passed off party line. There were 2 excused votes. You had all the yeas. You can see it's always easy to find where I am because I'm always alphabetically at the end of the list. And so you can see the nays there. And so why was this a party line vote? By the way, it's a tax revenue PAX, and well, that might be why, but there's another reason. If you click off of that, okay, so scroll down till we get to the available documents, and I will show you what a ghost bill is. They exist. Now you know the ghosts are real. Okay, right there, if you look at the bill documents, original bill, then there's a substitute bill, then there's a bill that's passed the legislature. If you click on the original bill, okay, go ahead and scroll down. There, well, now look, line number 1, there's the title. Now see, I showed you that the be enacted by legislature. Everything before that is the title. There's the title, an act relating to tax revenue and creating a new section, and then the bill contains that language. That's it. Well, I agree with you. I think it is. It's certainly it's anti-transparent and it's not honorable. Well, yeah. Well, I can tell you I have sponsored a bill. Representative Walsh and I, pretty good friends down there, sponsored a bill to end this practice, and I think we should pass it. It didn't. Yeah, well, I'll tell you this. So that's a good point, because when they brought this bill to committee, nobody showed up to testify. And here's a simple question for everybody in the room, regardless of your proclivity with regard to Republican and Democrat policies. Simple question: is there anybody that thinks I should have voted yes or no on that bill? I mean, I don't know what it is. How am I supposed to vote on it? Yeah. So if we click the back, so her question was another text. If you go back, so this is the. Hit the back button again, please. Back again. Okay, so now hopefully this is starting to kind of paint a picture. The stuff that I began the session with was to give you a backdrop to understand how to review this information. So like I told you, the original bill was drafted, first read, and then it got substituted. So you can look at the substitute bill, or you can look at the bill as passed legislature. Click that one. And this is what they do. They run those bills. They post them early so that they pass or technically conform to transparency laws, because they've been available for public review for long, but you saw there's nothing in it to see. And if you scroll down, you'll start to see, just zip through it. Keep going. Here's all the stuff that they put in at the last minute. It's all new tax policy. And they do that because they don't want you to come down and get enraged about what the tax policy is. So if we go back, do me a favor, go back, hit the back button to the, yeah. Yes.
In any way voice his opinion except as represented when it's on?
Kind of, not really. So the question was that so I've explained that you can voice your opinion at the committee level. The question is, can you do the same thing at the floor level? And so you can come to the floor, you can sit in the balconies of the floor, you can record from the balcony, but you can't speak, you're not addressed, you just have to observe what we do. So, well, I'll tell you what, I want to make sure I get through this thing and we'll go to Q&A, so I appreciate you saying that. And I share your frustration, but yeah. Well, I would agree. Look, if you want to see an existential 50,000-foot review of what is happening in politics, this is it. You see a pendulum swing. Every few cycles, you see the pendulum swing. And what has happened is the pendulum swings from one side right now in this state, it's on the Democrat side, people get really frustrated like you. They get up in arms, and then what happens is the pendulum will swing. People rise up, and this is how you got a Donald Trump. Now, what happens? The question that has to happen, well, you're happy, but I will tell you this. If the pendulums swing to my side, I guarantee you people are going to come to my office and say, Jesse, the rules still exist this way. Use them against the Democrats. Should I? No. So when pendulum swings, you got to let go of your anger, and ideally you adopt laws that benefit everybody equally the same. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened. And when the Republicans had control in the past, before I was ever even thinking about politics, they chose not to change it then either. The fact of the matter is I'm trying to educate you a little bit on this, because it takes a common cause, a civil decency, which our founding fathers edified for us, despite their differences. I mean, you got to think back to Thomas Jefferson being the vice president of John Adams, and how visceral their relationship was, and how much Thomas Jefferson did to undercut John Adams. And then eventually he becomes president. And if you go back and you can read the letters, eventually they reconciled. And John Adams was initially mad at everything that Thomas Jefferson had done to him. But eventually they reconciled, became good friends. And you can see it through their letters. And at some point, somebody's got to rise up and be the better man. And that's what I'm trying to advocate to you. But in this case, back to your question, ma'am, you asked, well, what did they do? So we showed you that they passed a different law. And that's typically what they've been doing down there. They get the bills up there front. Nobody's really paying attention, but even if you did, you couldn't tell what it was. The press couldn't do it either, because they couldn't see it. And then they substitute in the real language. Because it's a broad title, they can kind of put whatever they want into there, and then they put that language into it. If you go up to the top, please, and pull up Bill 2158. Actually, I think, didn't you have another page open with 2158? No, I don't think I did that. So if you could pull up 2158. See, and you can notice the number, the enumerated list, they kind of did these all at once. 2167 or 2168 is the same thing. So click on 2158. Now I want to show you an additional resource. So scroll all the way to the bottom. Keep going.
This is available to all of us.
Yep, it is. It's available to you on your phone too. Yeah, you can. And there's more. So as she was scrolling down, if you don't, I'm going to see if I can stretch here. Can I make this happen? I can. Let me drive for a second, if you don't mind. Is this okay for everybody? Because if you don't know, I'm a software engineer in my real job, and so I'm kind of quick on these things. So these are all the amendments that were put on it in the Senate, and you can see all the amendments. There you go. Look at all the amendments I tried to put on this guy in the House. And they were not adopted. And but this was another one of their ghost bills. Now, the available videos is what I wanted to show you, because everything is recorded on TVW. You don't take my word for it. You can watch it. And contextually, you can see when they presented this bill on the committee, in the Finance Committee, when we heard the bill. And you can follow along. TVW archives these for you. And so here's 2158. Vicky's one of the bigger lobbyists down there. So let me just show you something here. I like to schedule these meetings long so we can kind of deep dive if you guys don't, so that you guys don't feel like I'm trying to cheat you and stall you out. I'm always going to, we've got plenty of time. So where's this going to go? Let's go. Well, I guess our internet connection. Oh, wait, where's our volume? Thought this was going to work. I guess we don't have volume on this guy. All right, well, we're going to pull off of that. I guess the volume's not hooked up. I was going to show you the line of questioning. There was a section so staff is briefing the bill right now. There was a section where the media, the press came up to testify on this. And I asked them a question. And well, we're not going to find it. We're not going to have the volume anyway, so we're going to go back off of that. But at least I showed you have video. You can see the floor action. You want to see what we did on the floor, you want to see our debate, you can go there. You can see all the different things that's contextualized there. It's all at your fingertips. And I guess the other thing that I will show you is up here, get email notifications, get phone notifications. You can comment on this bill from here. All of this is available to you, so you could stay in touch with everything and manage us. And this is one of the reasons why I decided to use this, because if I didn't, I wouldn't have been able to explain it to you, because I'd have been used to what I have. And so in this case, the committee, when I asked the press, the lobbyists for the press, I said, don't you have any concerns that they're pushing this bill so through quickly? And he goes, absolutely we do. And it was I don't think he was comfortable with the fact that I put him on the spot, but they were there because they were worried that they were going to get swept up in this tax bill. Now, 2158 is a massive tax bill to, it said, now read the bill there, creating a workforce education investment, scroll back up please. Creating a workforce education investment to train Washington students for Washington jobs. Now, I will tell you, this is going to get a little bit more partisan, but I didn't support the bill, but I got to tell you, this bill is a bad bill. And there were a lot of every Democrat voted for it, because what it does is it's providing for free college education. And people go, yay. Look. Well, I'm not going to talk that one. Let me stay on topic for this one. It probably did have that, but I couldn't have told you because they ran it through so quick I didn't get a chance to read the whole damn thing. Now, in this case, though, where did they get the money for it? That's, well, not necessarily. Because normally what is said is we're going to tax the rich to give to the poor. But in this case, what this bill did, in a hasty fashion, was it taxed Medicaid and Medicare affected families, fixed income and low income. That's it. Oh, it also taxed, it actually taxed the low income building providers too, the ones that were trying to engage in the state to help our housing crisis. No, a different bill. That's a different one. I voted against that one too. But so what they did was they targeted a massive B&O tax increase on all of the doctors and medical providers that are accepting Medicare and Medicaid patients, which means that if you are living in a rural area, and that one doctor that, I mean, if you go up and down the Key Peninsula, for example, there's hardly any doctors up there at all that will take Medicare or Medicaid. You have one or few options, and if you're on a fixed income, can you afford to drive all the way to Seattle or to a hospital in Tacoma or wherever you need to that will take it? Because a lot of providers, and this is one of those things that if you're seeing a doctor that accepts Medicare or Medicaid, you should give them a pat on the back. They don't get rich. Those doctors are near, they can hardly survive in their practice. They're barely surviving. They're making a little bit of income, but they're doing it out of the kindness of their heart to serve a low-income community. And what they did was they taxed those people and then gave a massive corporate carve-out to all the hospitals that are making a crap ton of money. That's what that bill did. So it targeted those specific doctors. They came down and they testified. And my God, the stories that they said were heart-wrenching. We're sitting there and I'm like, there's no way they're going to move this bill after these doctors came down en masse and said, you're going to put me out of business. You're going to have to force me to move into a city and work under a hospital as an employee, but none of the rural people that I served are going to get care anymore. And so they passed the bill over our objections, and then I don't remember the percentages. It was, we got all these little different percentages on the B&O. And my point being, they raised it on those areas. So again, and I got to tell you, there's not a single legislator in the state that ever campaigned on the notion that said, I'm going to tax Medicare and Medicaid affected families to give able-bodied kids free education. Now, I was a poor, low-income kid, and I would have never wanted to work off the back or get free education off the back of somebody that's on a fixed income. Now, yes, are there concerns, and can my heart go out to kids that are in need, that we want to help get an education? Yes. But I'll tell you what, we don't need to fund it this way. We should have funded it a different way. And the problem that you get by running ghost bills and hastily passed bills like these is you don't get the refining process that comes through real debate, through real consideration. When you get one party using the rules to their favor in a non-honorable way and you force it through, you get an inferior product. I don't care if it's the Republicans doing it, they would get an inferior product. If it's the Democrats doing it, you need the iron sharpens iron, if you will, and we need that refining process. And it's something that we need to aspire to, because if we don't, what you get is a bill that doesn't work. And what happened? You didn't hear it in the press. It came through finance. There was a bill that was passed 2 weeks ago, signed by the governor. The bill was dropped in the Senate. It was passed out of the Senate, went through the entire process in less than 2 weeks. Came to the House, and in less than a week, they ran it through our committee, ran it up to the floor, forced a vote on it, and so in 3.5 weeks' time, a bill went through the entire process and was signed by the governor 2 weeks ago. What did it do? Great question. It fixed this because the bill was so bad it was about to crush industry in the state, so bad that even the Democrats realized it and they had to fix it. And the press did not cover it. And I'll tell you, when that bill, I can't remember the... What happened here?
You know what that's like? That's like overdosing a patient and waking them up on narcotics. These guys are freaking.
Hold on. Yeah, I don't want to disparage people. Yeah, who's got the point of order? Yeah. Okay. Hold on. Thank you. So, yeah, I'm going to get to Q&A, and I'll probably go there in less than 5 minutes. Now, I'm deathly afraid that you think I get into hyperbole with this. I'm trying not to. I'm just telling you what is happening. And the bill to fix this, I could show it to you. I don't know the number, but I can find it. It was Senator Peterson that ran it. Would you like me to pull it up, or do you just want to take me at my word? Okay, thank you. All right, so they passed it through. And they fixed it really quick, because what was happening was the technical details of the bill for when the taxes were due versus how they were calculated on businesses were untenable, and it was going to sweep in a whole broad set of industry that they didn't want. And when they ran that bill through, well, on this one, all the amendments that I did on this bill on the floor of the House last year were to carve out the Medicare and Medicaid affected doctors. And then there was also a provision in there, they were going after some home builders as well, and I tried to carve out with an amendment that said any home builders that are working on exclusively I offered two versions, exclusively or in part on low-income housing projects, let's exclude them from the tax so that we keep the cost of building low-income housing down. And we did this, but they denied all of them. The amendments were specifically to carve out Medicaid, to carve out Medicare. And so when they passed the fixed bill again this year, I ran the same amendments on the floor. And if you follow the bills, you go and you look at testimony, you can see us advocating for it. And on the last one that we had, I mean, I work on a tax study work group with a bunch of the Seattle Democrats, and they know when we get into these meetings, it's not vitriolic like you see in the press. You know, when we get into these meetings, we're actually trying to solve it. And I'm working with these guys. I'm like, how are you doing this? Come on, we got to get the money some other way. If you're going to pass the bill, I still probably won't vote for it if you want to give every kid free education. I think kids need to work for something. There's no value in it if you're getting it yourself or getting it for free. I paid my way through Notre Dame. Now, I don't expect every kid to be able to do what I did, but at the same time, there's something to being able to work for something. And if we don't instill that in our kids, they're going to get... Thank you. But I fundamentally believe this. If you don't instill that in our kids, eventually they're going to get crushed by competition from China and India. And the truth is, I work in Silicon Valley. I see all the competition coming over in IT, and these guys are sharp. They are well-trained, they are well-educated, and they're going to kick the crap out of our kids if we don't instill some type of tough skin, thick skin into these kids and help them learn. And I want them to be able to compete. But in this case, we debated on the floor, and I brought up the amendment again for the Medicaid. I said, fine, if you won't take Medicare, at least Medicaid. Think about the single-parent mom that's just trying to get her kids some dental care. At least carve that out. And when they got up to give a response, one of my, I consider her a decent friend on the Democrat side stood up and she says, and this is actually really funny. She gave probably a 2-minute response to ask for a no vote on the amendment to carve out Medicaid. And she said, I appreciate the good gentleman from the 26th. I know he's genuine, but we just need the money. And I ended up standing back up and I said, then I'll bring the bill down. I will vote for a different amendment. I will actually vote for an amendment to raise taxes elsewhere to give you the money that you want. Just don't put it on single parent moms trying to get their kids. They still voted it down. Now, what's funny is she actually had a moment of, magnanimism on the floor. And so I requested the video that showed our debate. And it showed mine. I can request mine. I have the right to request mine. But when I requested the video that showed hers, it's all public. You can go see it. I can carve out a link for you, but when I requested the specific clip so that I could show that to you, the clerk's office denied it because they didn't want me to, and this is what they said, they did not want me to have the Democrats' language tied to mine where she was edifying my point. That happened last week. So that's, yeah, go ahead. Rules Committee, all right, so we're going to move into Q&A now. So we'll start that one so I give you the full hour, and I'll stay a little bit later just to make sure every question gets answered. The Rules Committee each committee had a particular focus. The Rules Committee, so consider a bill that has to do with some type of policy around zoning rates, but because it's affecting zoning rates, it has a tax implication as well. Okay, so that bill ideally, if it was zoning rates that dealt with the way cities or counties zoned, it would be referred to the local government committee. And the local government committee's job is to consider strictly the policy around the zoning rates. Their job in that committee, now it's their purview, so they can consider other things if they want, but the way it was structured was that committee would consider the implications of the zoning. And then they would vote on the merits of that and pass it along. But because it had an impact on tax revenues, ideally then it would go to the Finance Committee. And the Finance Committee would consider solely the impact of the tax implications. Then, and that's what those committees, so you had a Policy Committee and you had a Fiscal Committee. We still have those. We work that way today. After it's done, it passes and it goes to Rules. Rules was supposed to consider the concept of how does this bill fit within the context of the rules of decorum and operation that we operate under, but also how does it fit together with all of the other rules that other bills have passed? Does it really fit in with the rest of everything? So it was a three-check system. I served on Rules one time. It was considered kind of exclusive to be on that committee, and I got off of it after one session because it was a joke. Because they don't use rules that way anymore. Effectively, the Rules Committee is the one committee that the Speaker chairs, and effectively, we'd sit down there, and instead of considering anything, what it turns into is a purgatory club, and basically any member of Rules doesn't change or consider anything in Rules Committee anymore. What we do is we simply pick the bills that we like and we move them to the floor. That's it. But the way the Speaker currently runs it is the Speaker can put a hold on any bill. So even if a bill of mine came up and I wanted to pull it to the floor, I still have to have permission even though I'm on the committee, the Speaker can still say, Jesse, you can't pull your bill, I'm not ready for you to do that yet. So effectively, it's the Speaker's discretion. And at any time, if the Speaker wants to, the Speaker can pull any bill out of Rules and move forward. So I got off of it because I'd rather deal with policy and do some real work because it was kind of a joke. It doesn't do what it was meant to do anymore. And effectively, what Rules is used for now under our current system is to quietly let bills die. Because what you can do is all of you could come to me, for example, and say, I really want you to do a bill that does this. And maybe I don't really want to do that, but I'm not stupid. So you might come to me with an advocation for a particular bill, and I'm reading the room, and I'm going, yeah, I'm not going to tell them no. Shoot, they're going to get on me, though. I won't get reelected. So I tell you, yes, you know what? I'm going to support that bill. But I don't like that bill. So I can tell you now, does anybody in here think that any elected politician is not Oscar quality worthy in terms of acting? I can tell you straight to your face if you want to what you want to hear. The reason why I spend time on this, I think, is critically important because it's my ability to show you how to verify whether or not I'm telling you the truth or not. That's why I consider this so important and I take time on it in my town halls. It's your way of keeping me honest and every other elected official that you deal with honest. So now, I could say, you're right, I'm going to sponsor the bill, I write the bill for you. And then you say, but now you're getting more educated. So now normally that's 101. I write the bill for you, I show you the bill, I drop the bill, and I just don't push very hard for the bill. The bill dies. So I satisfied you because you said, oh man, we love Jesse. He wrote that bill for us. But so what if I wrote the bill? If it doesn't pass, it doesn't matter. So I got my cake and ate it too. But now you guys are a little bit more savvy, and you say, hey, Representative Young, you dropped the bill, but I still see it hasn't been scheduled for a hearing. Chop, chop, man. You going to get on that and get that bill scheduled for a hearing? Now all of a sudden I got to start hike to it. Okay, but I've got another way. I can trick you again. I'll get that bill scheduled for a hearing. I'll go cut a deal with a Democrat. Just bring it for a hearing, but don't bring it up for a vote. So you get the hearing, you can come down, you can testify on it, but I got a deal back door with the chair. Hey, I'll help you out on another bill, but look, I got to take care of this. I got to appease some people. So get it at a hearing, but don't give it for a vote. Okay, but now you're a little bit more educated. You now know that once it's had a hearing, it's got to get scheduled for exec. So you come back and you say, Jesse, chop, chop. Great, I'm glad you got us the hearing. Get the bill scheduled for a vote. Now I got to go do that because you now know how the game is played. And so now the bill, I get it voted out of the floor, but I got another way I can kill it without really you knowing. Fine. Hey, Chair, I know I told you I didn't really want exec, but they're pressing me on it. Someone really knows what they're doing. So do me a favor. Just vote it out and get it in the rules and then ask the speaker not to move it. Put a hold on it in rules. And that's why I call rules purgatory, because there's no oversight of it. There's no TVW, by the way, of the Rules Committee. That's the one committee where it doesn't happen. And so the bill could go in the rules, and I can tell you, look, man, I got it even voted off the floor or off the committee. Man, we're hard charging, man. All we got to do is get this thing out off the floor by a certain time. And but it sits in rules, and it's never brought up. And then the deadline happens, and the bill is dead. Now, this happens all the time. Now, in one sense, you could do that with me, but here's what you have to understand. I'm in a minority. I can't force that bill through anything, but the Democrats can. And I get people coming into my office all the time saying, do you support this bill? And the first thing I do is I look it up and I say, well, does the sponsor support the bill? Well, yeah, they ran the bill. I'm like, yeah, but it's not moving. They're in the majority. All they got to do is go over to their buddy and say, hey, you're my bill. But they don't do it. And this gambit's getting run left and right, left and right, left and right, because they're saying one thing and doing another. And now you know. Yes?
So, Jesse, last year, a number of
Oh, wait, hold on a second. Hey, Richard, can we let's use the mic so everybody can hear. And
So this last year's legislative session, a number of these revenue-enhancing bills passed through. A number of us found out about it quite late, and it showed up, as it turned out, in a populist vote at the end of last year, which were advisory votes back to the legislature to reconsider some of those revenue increases. What now becomes of the fact that most of those passed?
Well, the original intent of those bills was that the legislature would actually take action on them, but they're not. Now, when we had more civility and governance, you used to see some magnanimous acts happen. So, for example, one example was the first $30 car tab initiative that Tim Eyman ran. Passed, it ran through the courts, and they killed it. They put an injunction on it and then said it wasn't a valid thing. And what did Democrat Governor Gary Locke do then? Governor Locke said, the will of the people have spoken. And even though it was technically killed in the courts, which he didn't agree with because he thought that they were stepping into legislative territory, he immediately called a special session, brought us all back down there, and then within like a week or two, they ran the initiative through a bill, made sure it was technically correct, and passed it to honor the will of the people. And that's kind of what the original intent of those advisory votes was. It was also meant to be a transparency thing, so that at the very least, if you're not, because again, I mean, it's sad to say, but, and I get it, most people have regular lives that they got to do. They're doing their 9 to 5, they're taking their kids to soccer practice, or they're doing whatever they got to do, and then they're going to bed. They're not waking up every morning thinking, oh, I'm going to be on top of TVW today. I get that. And so the thought behind the advisory votes was to give you at least one more mechanism to say, here's the final product that the legislature produced. It's a new tax. Vote on it. If I were in control and I saw those, I would be inclined to want to sponsor a bill to do that. And the Republicans usually sponsor these bills, but they don't get hearings because I get frustrated sometimes. I mean, if I'm just being candid with you, look, we have right now a $2.5 billion surplus right now. Now, think about that. We passed a budget last year, and based off of the estimates, the results that we had up through Q4 and Q1 of last year of our gross receipts in revenue from the state from taxes. We then used the estimations or the projections for what that was expected to produce for us in the coming biennium, and we passed a budget based off those expectations. And now we've gone through just 3/4 of a year, and the Q4 results came out. They're presented to us, and the Q4 results tell us that we have $2.5 billion more than what we anticipated. And I remember back to when Governor Inslee was first elected. We had a $38 billion budget in the operating budget. And at the time, he made the case, look, we've got some major issues in the state, but we can fix them. I just need $2 to $3 billion. You give me the $2 to $3 billion, we're going to address homelessness. We're going to address the mental health crisis and the opioid deal. That was what he was saying. And he needed about $3 billion to do it. Now, when he first came in, we were still on the back end of trying to recover from the economic, the Great Recession. And so there was great debates, should we give it to him, should we not? But he got it. He got his money. And then they spent it. We didn't get the results that we wanted, though. Now, that was when Governor Inslee came in, it was about a $37 to $38 billion budget. It's over $50 billion now. Our economy has grown that much. We're at $50 billion. And now we have a surplus of $2.5 billion, and they're still running tax increase bills. Why? We've got $2.5, without passing any tax increase right now, we have $2.5 billion more that we could spend on solving these problems, or we could give it back to you. And how many of you?
Yours is mine. You have it, I get it, and you don't say anything about it.
Well, so the Republican caucus 2 days ago came out with every member sponsored the bill. We just proposed that we should give $1 billion of it back in a tax cut. And so we're proposing that. A number of us have come back and said that in addition to that, we want to give another $750 million or more back in property tax cuts, because your property taxes are going way up to the roof. So we're trying to do that. So we're working on it. But the well, fair enough, and the governor does feel as though we need that. But keep in mind, he's not saying that we just need that. He says we need that and more because they want to raise taxes again. And I'm telling you, I'm fearful of what that will do to our economy. We have a growing economy. They passed taxes last year, and the implication of them still hasn't hit yet. And I think that this is the last big budget surplus we're about to have, because the effect of those tax increases are going to start to diminish business. And what I'm concerned with is making sure that jobs of the 21st century, which has been a slogan of mine for a number of years, are continuing to come here. I want us to continue to take jobs out of Silicon Valley and bring them up here. These are high-paying jobs. I want to see more manufacturing reinvested. If you don't know, there's about it's over $2 billion investment about to be made in Puget Sound Naval Shipyard from the Trump administration. That's free money from the federal. I hate to say free money, but it's money outside of our purview that's about to be invested here. Let's get our trade going. Let's get that investment through the schools with CTE. Let's make sure that kids have multiple choices. And I would hate to so stifle the economy with these new regulations or these new taxes, in this case, that the businesses choose a different environment to go to. And then our kids won't have those jobs. So let me go back here. Sorry, you've been waiting for a while. Oh, hold on. Let's let Richard come to you in. Thanks, Richard.
Well, you've got 2158 on there. Can you scroll down to the amendments again?
Yeah.
My question is, you talked about, you generally agreed with the idea of this bill, but it was the funding that you disagreed with.
No, not totally. I said that there's a way that I could potentially get on with some type of, especially if you're targeting low-income kids that really need it, maybe helping give them a hand up.
So
But in general, I'm not in favor of free college
you
education.
agree with it. Can you show us which one of these amendments that you proposed found a different way to fund this?
A different way to fund it?
Yeah.
In this bill, I didn't. I proposed an amendment that would take out the Medicaid and Medicare. That's on this bill last year. By the time they ran it through, like I told you, this was one of those speedily processed bills. I didn't have time to write. It was in the fix to this bill this year that we came and I offered that on the floor. And this one, if you look at my amendments, we can pull them up. Okay, so on Amendment 836, you can click on that one. Do me a favor and right-click on it and open in a new tab. And then do the same thing for each of the others. Okay, so go down to the next line, right-click, open in a new tab. We'll just look at them real quick. So you can see the tabs are loading up there, so that way we'll be able to quickly parse through what we're doing here. All right, you clicked on it, that's fine. Okay, so you can see the language that I'm attempting to amend, but every time we do an amendment, one of the things you get is the OPR staff, the bipartisan staff that's not hired by either caucus. They will write an effective statement. This exempts businesses with at least 30% revenue from payments from Medicaid from paying the B&O surcharge. That was one of my amendment offers to the Democrat Party, to carve out these businesses that are serving Medicaid patients. So if you go up to the other tabs up there, you can just quickly get a purview of some of the things. This was my play to offer them. This one says 25%. I was offering different offers at different percentage levels, which would have different impacts on the amount of revenue it would affect as an offer to the Democrats. If you don't like that offer, how about this one? Let's pick something. They chose to say no to all of them. Now, that bill, like I said, was run extremely quick. So at the time, I was simply trying to save the Medicare and Medicaid doctors. Okay, so when they ran the new bill this year, it was on that bill where I ran similar amendments to try to carve them out. And then when the response came from one of my colleagues on the floor from Seattle, said that we still need the money, I said it on tape. You can see it. It's on TVW. I said, if you put the bill down right now, I will sponsor a bill with you to find the money elsewhere. And I would have raised taxes. I would have done it for that particular instance. I would have done it. And they chose not to do it. Thank you for the question. I guess we got her. She's been waiting for a little while.
Can you clarify for me, if we take money from Medicaid, doesn't it come out of the Medicare fund?
So, yeah, thank you for the question. So the phrase that I used, let me be specific. So I said the tax hurt Medicaid and Medicare affected families, because there's no way to tax the families. What they did was they raised the B&O tax rate on those particular businesses, in this case the doctors, that are serving Medicare or Medicaid families. And how did they do that? Well, by raising it on those doctors that primarily are receiving patients that accept Medicare and Medicaid. So it didn't affect the Medicare reimbursement rates. It didn't affect or the Medicaid rates either. What it did was it had the effect of removing the doctor and his availability for the patients that use Medicare or Medicaid. Does that make sense?
They ask you all the time,
But
you know.
my question is, what is the difference between, like I'm on Medicare, but you hear the term Medicaid quite a bit. Where does the money come from? Do we take Medicare monies to put into Medicaid at all?
Medicare is basically, at a very high level, Medicare is for your elder population. Medicaid is for your low-income folks. Okay, and in this case, there are federal dollars and rules and regulations entanglements, but effectively what the federal government does is it will give us an initial kitty to play with for either of these. And they get that money from income taxes. So they effectively send that down to the states. Now the state will supplement that kitty, if you will. But the federal government, with the rules that it puts on us, basically says we're going to let the states, each individual state, create a system for how it's going to disperse that money. So by the time they give that money to the state adds whatever it's going to add to either pot, and then it starts to disperse it accordingly. And they got to maintain all the federal rules that came with that pot of money, but then they can do their own. So that's where your money comes from. This tax on 2158 was a tax on businesses, and specifically they carved out all the major corporate hospitals and instead taxed the local doctors. And it's these local doctors that are agreeing to see Medicare and Medicaid patients. Now, the reason why that's important is because if you come in as a Medicaid patient for a broken arm, as opposed to go to just a corporate hospital, or if you go to a non-Medicaid or Medicare doctor, okay, the hospital is going to charge you a pretty big amount, okay? The doctor is probably going to, that's on insurance, is going to charge you the maximum amount that he can get from insurance to reimburse. But if you are paying with Medicare, first off, you're limited doctors, because some doctors won't take it. Why? Because they have to do the same thing to fix your arm that the other doctors did, but Medicare says you can only charge this much, and then they will only reimburse them, which means those doctors aren't making a lot of money. And that's why I was trying to carve them out, because they're doing yeoman's work to serve the community. And I think that we shouldn't be raising their taxes and penalizing them. We should be giving them a pat on the back, because these doctors could make a lot more in the private practice if they're doing insurance reimbursements, or if they go work as an employee in the hospital. And effectively, that's what the outcome of this bill is incentivizing these doctors to do, is go into a corporate model. And I don't trust these hospitals. They're for profit. So this gentleman's been waiting for a while.
Whoever sponsored this bill was looking for more revenue. Why did they limit themselves to just that group of doctors? Why didn't they go across all doctors?
That's a great question. We had amendments. I can't remember who ran the amendment. I think it may have been Stokesbury, Representative Stokesbury. But we ran the amendments to say, hey, you can get, so gentlemen, to your question too, Rep. Stokesbury, I think it was him, but we offered an amendment that said, put the tax on the hospitals. And that would have swapped the revenue, right? We wanted to take it off of here and grab it from there. And one of the suggestions was to put it on some of the hospitals. And they chose not to. But you might want to go look at their campaign contributions.
Still, why were they avoiding the doctors that don't take Medicaid and Medicare? Couldn't they have targeted all private practice doctors or non-hospital-based doctors and had a lower rate then?
No, they did. They targeted all doctors.
I thought they only targeted those doctors that took Medicare and Medicaid.
No. My amendment targeted them by trying to exclude them.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So, because they're not making as much, I wanted to give them a break. I mean, and just to be clear, if you're a regular doctor and you're choosing not to accept Medicaid or Medicare, and you're getting your full reimbursement rates through insurance and everything else, then I wasn't trying to exempt them out. They're doing just fine. I was just trying to get the ones that are serving the low income and the fixed income communities. Oh, thank you for coming. Oh, okay.
I have one question. I don't watch the comedy hour anymore. I watch the Democratic debate. One of my big questions about that is, I've never seen an American flag on the debates. Nowhere.
Yeah.
Why?
You know, I don't know. The first. We went to sleep again. You know, before Colin Kaepernick really knelt down at the flag, it kind of sparked something in the country. And it got political. Before that happened, I'd been appointed, and in 2014, when I got appointed. So as I was sharing with you how the whole process works, we operate like a 4-quarter football game. So everything that's done there operates within a calendar. That calendar is divided into basically 4 sections. It's like 4 quarters. The first quarter is longer than the second quarter, and it's longer than the third, and so on and so forth. The last quarter only lasts a couple of weeks. And the reason why they define it that way is we have certain cutoffs. You have to get certain progress on a bill before that quarter ends. And if you don't make the progress, that bill's dead. It's our way of starting to winnow down to the bills that are good enough to make it out, if you will. And in this case, in 2014, when I was appointed mid-session. The session had already begun by the time the appointment occurred. So I come in, and I effectively missed the deadline to be able, because I came in late, I missed the deadline to be able to get a bill out, drafted and written in time, and then considered for hearing, and then exec'd out. And so I was looking at the real possibility of serving this 1/2 term in office as an appointee, and the political reality at the time was that all bets were against me being reelected. It didn't seem like I was going to be able to do that. And so I went to leadership and I said, hey guys, look, I don't know if I'm going to be able to come back or not. I'm going to run and I'm going to try my best. I would sure love to be able to do something. It's kind of like if you ever watched the movie Rudy. Rudy was never in the game, and he really wanted to get in the game just to show that he was part of the team. So I went to them and I said, hey, is there anything that we can work on that I could potentially do? And they said, well, you can work on a resolution. And a resolution doesn't require the Senate to vote on it, doesn't require the full committee process. It's just something that you can write. It's more ceremonial. So I wrote a resolution to honor the United States flag. And, well, don't clap yet.
Still doesn't answer my question. My question is, the Democratic debates
Yeah.
never show an American flag
Okay,
at
so
any of them.
My point,
And we have one here, but you never see one at one of the debates. And my question is it due to the fact that they're going to try to democratic or to dictator type ship?
you mean like more of a, okay, I understand.
Okay.
So
anyway.
the background that I was laying was simply that I ended up getting that bill passed unanimously off the floor, and all the Democrats voted for it. Fast forward, and I think the Colin Kaepernick thing really started this. If you come to the floor of the House now, we have our flags, and if you look at all the Republican desks, every Republican desk has a United States flag and a Washington State flag, and none of the Democrat Party has a flag on their desk at all. And I don't know why they're doing it.
They never have any. They never on the stage.
I just don't know.
On the stage,
Yeah.
they have no flags, period.
I think they should. Well,
If you watch, and every Democratic debate has been that way. I'm sorry, but I have an obligation.
thank you for
I
your
have
question.
to
I
go.
appreciate you coming. Can we ask? Can we get her a question real quick? Sir, thanks for coming.
I want to thank you for this presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I have two questions, but they're kind of together. When I got my license plate information this year, a $75 tax was added to because I drive a hybrid.
Yeah.
And I read somewhere in the paper that this tax was to put on electric power stations for all electric cars. Well, mine uses gas. So how do I, as a citizen, I mean, I had no idea this bill was even before the state legislature. How do I find out about these kind of tax bills that are coming up that may affect me in this way? So I can write a letter, go down and testify, instead of getting a bill and find out I have to pay $75 more in taxes.
Well, first thing you do is you can reach out to your legislators and ask for some overview of that, but that only works partly. See, if a bill is run and goes into a committee that I don't serve on, I don't necessarily ever see that bill, because if it never makes it out of the committee, I won't see it because I don't consider those bills. If it makes it out of the committee and makes it to the floor, then I get my first crack at it. And so what I would suggest is, one of the things you can do is you can come on here and you can do certain notification requests on certain keywords. So if bills come up, you can ask for that to be sent to your email to try to be proactive. Once you find the bill, then you can hone in on that and ask for specific requests to that bill. And that's one way to do that. In terms of the policy, on the transportation side, which is really kind of where my bailiwick is, there was the initial push to say, let's get green, and so let's add all these incentives for people to buy the green cars and hybrid cars, and let's try to start the transition to a more electric model of transportation. But then there was a big push that came out of Seattle. And one of the big fights that we're having right now is that we have an 18th Amendment protection on transportation revenue. And that 18th Amendment in the state constitution says if it's taxed out of the gas tax or any of these motor vehicle type of taxes, it has to go towards road infrastructure. And there's been a subtle debate where there's been a play with the definitions of what is that road infrastructure. And so we've been starting to see a bleed of that money that's going, especially down in Seattle, for bike lanes and other considerations like that. And we're fighting that because we're like, look, we got potholes in the road. We've got expansion that we need to do, and you're siphoning it off for Seattle. Let Seattle pay for their own bike lanes if they want it. We shouldn't be paying for it out of the state. Now, what happened was, while all that's going on, and then all this green initiative's going on, you started to see a major push out of Seattle as they're trying to find more money, and they start to go, well, you know what? Since they're pushing against us taking gas tax dollars for bike lanes, what if we created other non-18th Amendment protected tax revenues that we could use for transportation? And then they go, well, hey, we know some people. We just got all these people to buy these green cars. They're not necessarily paying as much in gas tax, but we haven't taxed them yet. So that's where you start seeing these proposals to add registration fees to hybrid cars and the tax cars. And what they're doing is they're siphoning that money off into bike lanes because it's not 18th Amendment protected. That's where that push is coming right now. Thanks for asking. Let's go back. She's been up for a while, and We got one back here. We haven't been back to that corner, so let's go back to the...
Thank you, Jesse. I'd like to preface my remark. The question I want to have is, I am on Medicare, and the federal government did increase taxes on my Medicare benefits. My question to you is property taxes. Our Gig Harbor property taxes have just been up.
Yeah.
And we went to our mortgage person and figured out what it's going to be for us so that we can be prepared when that tax bill comes in. It's $500 a year on a fixed income.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's any discussion in the legislature about seniors, and they can be taxed right out of their homes. That's what we're facing.
Well, you know, in a community like this, it's an interesting debate, right? Because you have, one of the things you have to understand at a government level, and I don't think I fully appreciated until I got there and understood, is that you've got this multiplicity layer of governance. You've got your local city level that has taxing authority. You've got your county level that has taxing authority. But then you've also got other districts that have taxing authority. You have a parks district. We've got the Penn Met Parks District out here. You've got the Key Peninsula Parks District. You've got your local fire districts. You've got your policing districts. You've got your school districts. All of these have been given taxing authority. And when you start to see these pile on top of each other, you get a $500 tax bill. And it's an interesting debate, and very rarely do I step into some of the local bonds or initiatives around taxing that you'll see on a February ballot or an April ballot when they're asking for these things. And the reason why is because I want to give preference to the local officials that you guys voted for those positions. And one of the problems with that multiple layer type of or tiered system of governance is that someone that's elected to a fire board or fire commissioner spot, or someone that's elected to a school board, isn't necessarily elected to take into consideration the effect of the fire, police, city, county, and state. They're just elected for their current position, and for that one task that they're elected for, they're trying to do their best to solve that issue of, oh, well, we need a new school, or we need to fix something. Well, if everybody thinks, you know, kind of myopically about that, just in that term, then everyone's looking out for their own best interest. And when they're looking out for their own best interest, what you end up seeing is that everybody ends up raising taxes, and then you're stuck with a bigger bill. And that's a big concern of mine. And it's one of the reasons why, at a state level, I've always supported, you know, for big bonds, a 60% threshold to pass it. And a lot of people come in and say, Jesse, that's just not fair. We should all have 50%. Well, the problem is that none of these local layers are thinking about everything in the whole and what the ultimate impact is. I am, though, because you're usually coming to me just like you did and bringing it up. So that's one safeguard. The real problem here, however, is that fundamentally when the Supreme Court or when any court steps in and legislates from the bench, you end up with unintended consequences. And when the Supreme Court made a decision on McCleary, they opened up a Pandora's box when it came to property taxes. Because the Supreme Court should have never weighed in on what was a purely legislative matter. And what they did was they forced us. So when I first got in office, it was still the big thing. What are we going to do to solve McCleary, which was the Supreme Court case? What are we going to solve it? Because they said that the state had to do it. So what happened was a grand compromise was created between the Republican-controlled Senate and the Democrat-controlled House. It's now all Democrat-controlled, but back then we passed a bill that said we are going to shift the way that we tax property. And what we did was we took a lot of authority back from the local levels, and we then applied that tax at the state level. And so we were trying to fix this multiplicity level layering of taxes, and the Supreme Court basically said we had to do it anyways, which I don't agree with the ruling, but they said we had to. So what we did is we, at the state level, took it back, and then we basically applied a broader based or higher rate of property tax at the state level. And what we did is we shrunk down the level that the local school boards could tax at, so that they couldn't tax you as high. And then we also went back to rules that specified how or what types of taxes the school boards could do. Originally, when school boards were given the authority, many years ago, when the school boards were given the authority to actually levy taxes, it was for enrichment purposes only. In other words, You couldn't use those local levy taxes to pay for your core operating functions, whether it was salary or whether it was just maintaining the school. You had to do it for enrichment, like you wanted an arts program. So you could go to your local people and ask them, hey, we'd like to have a bigger arts program. Or maybe you wanted to facilitate sports more. Maybe you wanted to open up ROTC, ROTC types of programs. Enrichment. That's all it was meant to be. And then after they opened it up many decades ago, then they started to add to the permissive types of things that they could spend as those local taxes on, those local levies. And what you ended up seeing was that schools and the local taxing authority that they have were more and more paying for teacher salaries, which was never meant to be the case. That's where McCleary came from. McCleary said we had to fix it. So we did. We took back some of their taxing authority. We put them back under a paradigm that said enrichment only, and then we came over the top and laid that tax in. Now, when we came up with that fix, we knew that we had an old system, and a new system. And if we ended the old system before starting the new system, we had a gap. So what we did, and we couldn't afford the gap for our kids, so what we said was we were going to overlap them 1 year. And so they'd be overlapped, and that's what you saw in 2018. That was the first overlap year. And then what was going to happen was the old system was going to go away, and then the taxes would come back down. Two things happened in between there. The grand bargain that was struck was killed the very next year because the Democrats came into power, and they immediately gutted the provisions that we had put in the McCleary fix bill that shrunk down the taxing authority for the school districts. They immediately raised the taxing authority back up for school districts. And they have filled that gap with more bonding and with more levies. That's just the fact. The secondary thing that wasn't the school district's fault was while we were doing all of this, nobody thought that your local county auditors were going to try to play into this game. And because nobody thought that was going to happen, no provisions came in to say that local county auditors couldn't mess with this. And what the local county auditors saw was that when this happened and the overlap happened, and then this one went away, there was a brief period of time where people were going to potentially see a reduction in their taxes. But if the county auditors came in and jacked up the assessed value of your property, they could fill in the gap and you wouldn't notice the difference. And so they did that. And the local county auditors in Kitsap, Pierce, a bunch of counties raised your assessments to try to fill in that gap. And then so you got this kind of big tidal wave storm where then all of a sudden the legislature comes in, changes the deal, allows schools to start taxing more, raising their taxing authority or the amount that they could levy. And as a result, you've got a massive increase the second year when you were supposed to see a decrease. And that's where we're at right now, and that's a major fix. We have sponsored legislation. Many members have sponsored legislation to fix this, and none of those bills are getting a hearing. And so now what you're seeing the Republican caucus do is say they're not going to fix that problem right now. They don't want to. They have the gavel. They are in the majority status. They're not going to fix it. Well, at the very least then, let's give you, with a $2.5 billion surplus, let's give you that money back and try to correct it. That's what we're trying to do right now. We will see if they'll take our proposals because they're not going to change the paradigm. And that's a big scary thing.
Discount based on the net or the gross income?
I don't know.
Because it looks like right now it's at the poverty level, so that if you're middle income, you have no benefit at all.
I'm happy
and
to get
how
that,
can that be raised?
I'm happy to get that answer for you, but I don't serve on those committees, so the specific details of those I don't have off a recall. I'd have to go look for you. We had a question there. And then let's go back to that corner. Rich, after that, let's go back there.
I was wondering how many calls came in this week as far as the taxes on the home and this $30 tab into Olympia, because I know there was a big rally to just delusion with phone calls of our disdain for how they're dealing with us, the citizens, and our voice isn't being heard. And I just wanted to let everybody know that they can get on Restore Washington and learn a lot, because people are talking from all over the state what has happened to their taxes, and we have to rally together. And do we have enough Republicans in this state that we can get to vote so that we can change things? Because something has got to give.
Well, I can tell you that I'm colorblind, but even being colorblind, I could see that Eleanor and my mom's ears were red from having the phone up to them all the time. So we got a lot of emails, and does it work? I'll tell you this. I have a rule in my office. I don't read spam mail, ever. I don't care if it's conservative spam mail. I don't care if it's Democrat spam mail. If you go through, so Restore Washington might get you involved, and if they're offering you a form letter that you can send in, I would recommend you be inspired by it, but then send me a personal email, because I will get that and I will read that. Because we get thousands of them daily. Thousands. And it's not just Restore Washington, that's more of a right-leaning one that will do it. There's a lot of Seattle-based ones that are left-leaning. And if you have to ask me who I'm going to prioritize, I'm going to prioritize constituents first, over lobbies, over massive spam campaigns, because I only have so many hours in the day. And so I never get to those. And I just have staff funnel them out. We put them in a corner. And because, I mean, some of these spam things, if a particular issue hits a topic on some advocacy group, I might get in 2 hours, I might get 500 emails from Colorado. Right? I'm not going to read those. I don't have time for that. I'd rather prioritize your emails. So, but in adopting a rule like that, that's kind of like using an axe to make a broad rule. And so, by rule, I just don't deal with spam. I don't have time for that. I want to make sure all my time is going towards you guys. So we're going to go here, and then we'll come over to this side. But these guys have been waiting for a while. Thanks, Richard.
Jesse, thanks for coming. I came in late, so if this question's already been answered, please pass on it. I'm concerned with air pollution as it relates to forest fires in our state. I'd like to know if there's, in this budget cycle or in this session, anything's been done to increase the money going to improve our forests in a way that will fight forest fires and limit their effect on pollution.
Not really. I can't say fully no, because there has been more money put towards fighting them, but in terms of preventative maintenance, in terms of getting in front of them, no. And that's been a major fight of ours. If you look at the governor's proposal for the carbon tax, and you look at his own scientific estimates for how much carbon that will reduce out of the air. And keep in mind, you're talking to somebody that's not necessarily anti-carbon. I partnered in 2015 and again in 2017 with Democrat Strom Peterson, and we've passed the preeminent carbon reduction policy in the state. But not only that, along the West Coast, our laws are producing more carbon reduction that I co-sponsored. And the reason why it was important was because in 2015, Republicans controlled the Senate. I co-sponsored it. My job was to deliver it through the Republican-controlled Senate, which I did. So I've reduced carbon, protected groundwater at the same time, built out or created the paradigm and system that is building out the electrification infrastructure that we need for green cars. All of that has been done, and the press will never cover it because I'm a Republican. And I don't know why they don't cover it, because if I hadn't stepped up for that, that bill would have never got passed. And the reason why Strom sought me out was because a lot of people know I'm probably the most conservative guy on the western side of the state. And it was that connection that I used to get the Republicans from the east side in the Senate to vote for it. I had the credibility to go in those offices and say, look, this is a good policy. We got passed. The policy was so good that when Governor Inslee was running for president, he used our policy as a basis for his environmental plan. So when I critique on your particular topic of carbon reduction, I'm all for it. I've passed laws to help it. I've sponsored laws to do that. In this case, if you look at Governor Inslee's proposal for the carbon tax, however, their 10-year estimate for how much carbon that would reduce is less than one season of forest fires putting carbon in the air. And so our point is, can't we just stop the forest fires too? If you stop the forest fires, 1 year is worth 10 years of your carbon plan. And we need to stop that, because it's devastating our natural resources. And to be truthful, in eastern Washington, where it's arid and dry, if the state would just hire contractors to go in there and clean it out, we would make a ton of money just clearing out the underbrush. The estimates from the forestry department are that a downed tree that's naturally downed can sit in the ground in eastern Washington, not here where it's wet, but in eastern Washington can lie on the ground for 5 years and still be commercially viable for lumber. All we got to do is go and drag it out of there. And then we take all the tinder that's lighting everything up. But we're not doing that, and that's a shame, because we could help the carbon. And look, you know what, sir? I would take the revenue from that and I'd put it towards the college stuff. I mean, that's another revenue source. We're just not using it. So,
Jesse, we have one comment on this issue that might be useful.
One of the things that everyone may not know is that the Forest Service, a lot of the issues on the Forest Service land where they're not able to go in and do sanitation, salvage, and other things cause a lot of the problems with this. And 2 years ago now, the Forest Service authorized some of the states that were willing, and our state is one of those, through the Department of Natural Resources, to take on doing sanitation, salvage, thinnings, and other things, especially in fire zones, that the state contracts on Forest Service land to actually clean up those areas. So if you can give more support to that, that's something that's happening now that didn't happen before, because we got a new Forest Service chief that is willing to start doing some things, even though her hands are tied with a lot of environmental other ways.
I would love to unbind her shackles, or his shackles, who didn't hear the pronoun, but in this case, there is a major solution that should be bipartisan. I mean, this is a major solution. If we just let them free to go clean that up, we'd prevent the fires and all the economic money that we lose from that, but then we'd also gain money and we'd help the environment. It's total. I just want, Richard, the lady back here has been waiting for a long time too. I just want to give her a shot.
I just have a question as to why you opposed 2447. That was a bill to require large cities to consider climate change in their city planning, since climate change is a real issue nowadays.
Let's pull 2447 up. I'll tell you what, while she's pulling it up, can I take another question? And once we get it up there, I'll take a look at it and we'll come back and we'll answer it. 2447. This couple over here has been waiting for a long time too. I want to back there.
Yes, we were just curious about the low carbon fuel tax, that 57 cents a gallon.
Yeah.
What's going on with that? Is that just going to be the 4 counties here, or is that going to be a statewide issue? Or
well, I'll tell you what. We will pull that one up too. Okay. It passed off the House. I voted against it. I wrote an op-ed in the Kitsap Sun. I made a post on it on Facebook. You can read that. The way in which they're implementing it, I think, is really bad. It's not going to reduce the carbon the way that we thought. So I talked about in generalities over here, but in specifics, it is literally giving massive corporate carve-outs. Now, the notion is that they say there's a new argument that's being made on this carbon stuff, and they're saying it's a minority or low-income affecting bill because minorities and low-income folks are densely populated along the I-5 corridor and in low-income neighborhoods, and so they're getting an undue burden of exhaust that they got to breathe in, let's say, or carbon. And so, Marlon, you owe everybody donuts. That's the rule in the legislature. If your phone goes off, you owe everybody donuts. So, So if that's where the main focus of carbon reduction needs to be, then why are they carving out the very people that along that I-5 corridor are producing the carbon? They carved them out. And the point that I made in the bill was that you're literally hurting low-income folks by raising the taxes that affect their ability to work, but you're carving out the corporate elite. This makes no sense to me. It's not the right way to run that bill. We should amend it and force, if you really want to reduce carbon, then target the people that are producing the carbon. And now the low-income aspect of it is, they say, well, here's the argument. Every time it's the same argument and it never gets the full due it's deserved. But they say, well, look, low-income people will benefit because they won't have to pay as much in gas tax because they'll have an efficient car that they can buy. And it gets better gas mileage. And I go, well, okay, yeah, but how are they going to afford the car? These cars are expensive. And then they come back and they say, oh, no, you don't get it. Representative Young, after a few years, a bunch of rich people have bought cars and then they'll sell those for newer cars and then the poor people can buy the used cars. And I'm like, are you serious? That's no different than the Democrat that told me that as a kid I should aspire to ride the bus. I didn't want to feed or a handout to ride the bus. I wanted a car. And my single parent mom wanted a car. I got to tell you, it was quite a trip going through and using Pierce Transit to take a bus with my mom to the store to buy groceries, have us all lug the groceries back onto a bus that was still 5 to 10 blocks away when it finally got there from our house, and have to walk through the rain with grocery bags, paper grocery bags, in our hands all the way home. That's not the way to live. And I got to tell you something else about that. Do you know what it's like sitting on a vomit-stained seat on a bus, carrying your groceries? It sucks. And I don't think that's the solution that we should be giving or attempting to provide to low income. If you want to help the low income and you want to help carbon, don't carve out the corporate elite and then raise the gas tax on the people that are trying to work. That's the fundamental problem I have with the low income aspect of it. They also say that the carbon, we have to do this carbon bill because it will foster major economic growth in the green industry. Okay, simple question. Anybody can answer it. If it is that much of a for sure economic endeavor that will for certain produce massive economic growth, why isn't every third world or mid-industrial level country investing in this right now? If it's a for sure thing, why aren't they jumping on the bandwagon before we do and get all those new green jobs there? If you're a mid-level industrial company and you are a country and you want to grow, then why aren't they jumping on it? The reason why is because it doesn't produce jobs. It kills jobs. It kills them. So it's not helping the economy either. And then when it comes to the carbon aspect, again, they're literally carving out the corporations in that bill. It's a triple whammy of badness, and I hope the Senate kills it. And that's what I basically said in my op-ed. And I just don't hear those arguments being made a lot. And then, look, you're talking to a dude that passed with a Democrat in a bipartisan fashion that people say that we want you to aspire to do as a representative, that passed the preeminent carbon reduction bill along the West Coast that's been in play for the last 6 years. And you never heard the media say a dang thing about it. Why? Why, because I'm a Republican? I mean, people come in and see me all the time and they assume because I'm an R that I'm anti-climate change. I may not agree with every solution that's put up there, but at the end of the day, when it comes to rubber hitting the road, I actually did something about it. And this bill is a bad bill. And I only mentioned the other things to know that I'm not just in the tank opposed to climate change, or in this case, carbon reduction, or in helping the environment. But in this case, that's a bad bill. I hope the Senate kills it. But okay, so we pulled up her bill. We can come back to yours later. Why don't you hit me up afterwards and I'll pull the bill up on my phone and I'll tell you where it is in progress. Was this the bill number that you asked for, ma'am? What was the number again? 2447, okay.
Climate change?
Can we scroll down?
I sure hope I have the right number.
For concerning certain new entries into the vehicle market as wheeled all-terrain vehicles?
Oh gosh, I'm sorry, I might have the wrong. There was a bill requiring the larger cities to consider climate change when they were doing their planning of their cities. I may have, I'm sorry.
Do you happen to know who the main sponsor of it was? I can find it for you that way if you know that.
Pardon?
Do you know who the main sponsor was, the legislative sponsor?
No, I don't remember who the sponsor was.
Do you think it might be 2477 or something close?
I don't remember why I wrote it 2947. I don't remember.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm happy to have you come to the office and I can go look through it for you.
Yeah, okay. I don't
thank you.
waste your time here.
Okay, we've got some hands down here.
Well, like just about everybody else here, we received our Valentine from the state a week or so ago with our tax statement. And I've been paying into Social Security since I was about, 13 years old. And when I was working, diligently put money in my IRAs, talk to my financial advisor. Okay, if we draw this much amount, we can pay our taxes, buy some groceries, and maybe go to a movie once in a while. Well, our tax bill this year went up $1,347. That's not the tax bill, that's just the increase this year for a house my wife and I bought in 1986 for about $180,000. So is there any way to get a movement started or maybe a bill to increase the threshold where you can have your taxes frozen? The threshold now is so artificially low that unless you're absolutely in poverty level, your taxes are just going to go up every year. So I'm just curious if we could get a bill going, or perhaps there is something to either raise the threshold to a livable level or perhaps even freeze property taxes at retirement age?
Okay. So, California has a law in place that freezes it freezes your assessed value for taxation at the price you bought it at. I'd be in favor of supporting a bill like that. So, because the truth is, when people are looking to move into our communities, there's a lot of consideration that goes into the property. You might be, if you're younger, you might be looking at school district. If you're retired and you have a fixed income, you might be looking at projecting out what your costs are going to be so that you can afford to stay in the house. And I think we need to make it easier for people to do those calculations so that they make the right choice when they buy, so they don't have any buyer's remorse. And in this case, freezing it at that level would be one of the ways, because then you'd be able to, you wouldn't have to worry about the assessors coming in and jacking up your, even if the rate stayed the same, if they raise your assessed value, you're getting taxed the same rate at a higher amount, you're still paying more. And there are a number of things that we could do. We've sponsored legislation to fundamentally just drop your taxes on it, give you rebates on it. We considered those options. We're considering options, or we're putting up options to give you a freeze like that. None of those proposals are being entertained by the majority party right now. And it's unfortunate, because I think it will have a net effect of swinging the pendulum back. If they pass the carbon tax or this head tax, which is an income tax, if they do all that on top of a $2.5 billion surplus, and then on top of all of your local property taxes going up under the scenario and the system that I just described for you, and hopefully that made sense, how all that stuff from McCleary came up. I hope I summarized that well so you can understand it. If they don't understand that they're taxing people out of their homes, I'm hopeful, at the very least, that people that don't normally vote are going to register to vote and come out and tell them, hey, we want somebody that will do that, and they'll vote for the guys that will. And short of us getting into a majority, I can't tell you when that's going to happen, because they will not consider these bills. We put them up, they won't give them a hearing. This gentleman's been waiting for a while, and then we'll come back there.
Thanks for coming here first. I've got a questions on HB 2638, which is the tribal sports betting bill that I think you were even one of the sponsors of.
I was, yeah.
Basically, it gives all the sports betting to the tribes, and therefore the state gets zero in taxes again, just like they do with the casinos. And in fact, there was several bills that included they could do sports betting at some local small-time gaming, and we could have added the availability of taxes on them. Why did we stick with the tribes once again? We're getting zero from them. In fact, in a lot of instances, not only are we getting zero taxes from them, we have to build their damn roads to their casinos. Now, what the heck fair is that?
Thank you for the question. It's an astute question. Yeah, that was a very interesting bill, and a majority of the legislature passed it. It required actually a 2/3 vote to get out. I sponsored the bill, or co-sponsored it. The first answer to your question is, this is not, the right to do that type of gaming supersedes the legislature in the sense that a compact and a treaty was signed a number of years ago. So the reason why the state doesn't get into gambling and the tribes have exclusivity to it was because originally there was no gambling in the state, and then the state got into gambling with the lotto. And after a number of years of making quite a bit of money on the lotto, the tribe said, well, this isn't fair. You're prohibiting us from doing something on our tribal land, and we want to be able to increase revenue this way. And so whether or not the legislature would have agreed or not agreed with that, it didn't matter, because they sued, and they won in the Supreme Court. And it came back and it said, they have, if the state is going to get into gambling by the Constitution, it cannot restrict the tribes. So the Supreme Court decision basically in a nutshell said, you guys go figure it out, but you can't restrict them anymore. So effectively, decades ago, the state signed a compact, and I don't think that compact was very wise, and it certainly was short-sighted, because what the state agreed to is, it said, because at the time, keep in mind, there was no casino gambling revenue at all. The state said, fine, we will keep the lottery, and you guys can have the casinos. The state signed that contract, that treaty. Okay. So, so his follow-up question was, well, other states have taxes on these things. The compact is very locked down, number one. Number two, when it came to this particular issue of sports gaming, the question then became, does that fall under the compact and the tribe's rights to do it, or does it fall under outside of that and the state can get involved in it? And there were a number of issues. And in answering your question, I'm going to change the paradigm a little bit. This was not a sports gaming bill. This was a data collection bill. And at risk for the data collection is the sports gaming is done mostly through this now. And it wasn't just sports betting. It was also online app gaming. You could download a Wheel of Fortune app. And on that Wheel of Fortune app, you could potentially gamble on it because you can buy credits to get more spins on the wheel. And the entire definition of these things and how that nexus hits between traditional gaming and online gaming is very complex. And that doesn't even address the issue of your data rights. And what we saw, and what I saw as a technology professional, was under the compact, if the tribes have the online gaming, they can only do it on tribal lands. And what I'm concerned with is I don't want kids getting hooked on gaming at a young age. I have a real problem with that, number one. Number two, I also have a problem with another issue we haven't talked about today, and that is, from a technology perspective, nobody in the country, Washington is the first state to try to do this, is really adjudicating at all a fundamental question. Who owns your image? Now, I'm going to wrap this in, so I'm not trying to obfuscate the issue. But who owns your image? How many of you think that Google or Amazon own exclusively your image and can profit from it? Does anybody think that they should? Okay, by contrast, how many of you think you should own your image? Okay, so I see lots of hands go up. Well, guess what? Amazon, Facebook, and these companies, they want to profit off of your image. Now, they don't want to profit off of the way they would profit off of Shaquille O'Neal or some big sports legend. They want to profit off of it through selling your data to identify who you are, selling to data collectors who sell it to insurance companies or sell it to marketing companies or who sell it to retail companies. And here's a real scenario for how that would work, and then I'll come right back to you. You walk into the mall, and the camera that used to be a VHS recording is digitized, and it snaps an image of you. That image is no different than the text on a page. It's bits and bytes. And the algorithms now to do facial recognition, to identify who you are, can happen in a split second. So they now know who you are. They can take that image of you, they can send it to a data consolidator, and they'll sell it to the data consolidator. The data consolidator is willing to buy the images of people walking into the mall because they will then take that image, do a search on it, and then compare it to the other information they already have on you. Purchasing habits. They've been able to buy your information. We've been trying to stop the Department of Licensing for years now, selling your data. The Department of Licensing is making millions of dollars right now selling your data, and I can't get the legislature to pass a bill to stop it. And so what do? They sell to the data consolidator. The data consolidator takes your ID based off of your facial recognition, IDs it with your credit card history, your purchasing habits. They will then sell it to the highest bidder, and or because they buy data from Amazon, they will then go and they'll say, hey, I want to know what your purchasing habits were in the past 2 weeks. So they can consolidate that with data from Amazon that says, Marlon attempted to buy a betting ensemble on Amazon, or she at least searched for a betting ensemble on Amazon, but she didn't purchase it. Who wants to know that information? Macy's and JCPenney's does. So then they go offer that to JCPenney's and Macy's. They buy the information, and then within 3 minutes of you walking into the mall, you get a text on your phone that says, hey, if you come into Penny's today, we'll give you 20% off a betting ensemble. The question is, should they have been able to profit off of that? Now, that's wrapped up into this bill because the people that are trying to come into the market, that were lobbying the market on this particular bill, were backed by massive data consolidators. And if they get it outside the tribal lands, do you know how much information they're going to get off of you from playing a game that you just think is a simple game but has gaming components in it and the potential revenue? They're going to sell massive amounts of that. And what are these big companies going to do? They're going to financially be invested in making sure our kids get hooked on the games, because once they got them and they got that app on their phone, those kids are going to use it, and they're going to make millions and billions of dollars off of it. And so I saw a way of, when that whole perspective, and we start to unpack that in the legislature, you saw 2/3 of the legislature go, you know what? It's better to keep this under the compact. Let the tribes have it. Now, here's the best part. The tribes can never allow you to game through an app if you're not on tribal land, which means that I can't game according to that. We locked it down. We're protecting gaming. We're protecting our kids. We're protecting your data all at the same time through this one bill that just had to do with, gaming rights, or at least that's what everyone thought. And in this one instance, we did it. Now, there was one final thing that also sealed the deal on this for me. In my time in Olympia, when I'm in the halls of the Capitol, twice in my entire career, only twice, has any lobbyist ever come up to me and offered a direct quid pro quo. And the backers of this were doing that, and I immediately booted them out. And I had already voted. From the IT perspective, I saw where this was going, which is why I signed on to the bill before people had a chance to hear it, because I had inherent knowledge of how that was going to work with data collection. But once I saw that, I immediately started telling everybody, you better stay away from these guys. They know better than that. You can't do that. You can't come up and say, hey, we're going to take care of you if you vote for this. Get the hell out of here. That's the worst part of politics. So that is the summation for where I landed on the bill. Did you have any follow-ups, or is that okay?
After all that, I'm still wondering I'm still wondering exactly why first off, why you even had to have it. I assume the Democrats wanted it for the tribes because the tribes always vote for them. But are you saying now that in order to make a bet on this system that they have to be on the reservation? How the heck do you control that?
Well, right now we don't have any law on it, but we do have laws that say you can't do online gaming. That law is already in place. There's no online gaming. But the question was a technical question around, do these types of sports betting or these other types of apps, do they fall under the current statutes the way they were technically defined? And there was a lack of clarity there, thus the bill, to clarify that. And in the context of clarifying it, supporting this bill maintained the current structure that we had, which was no online gaming in the state. And so that's kind of a high level. That's a crude high level definition, but if you want to talk more, I'm certainly willing to chat with you offline. We got some other, I should just make a note. We're 10 minutes over. I'm willing to continue to stay. My next one isn't until 1. So I guess I've got about another 15 minutes I can stay before I got to go to Bremerton for another town hall. But we got a girl in the back that we can talk to, a couple of those guys, and then we'll get you next, sir. Thank you. I appreciate you all coming.
So I was wondering why we have to have taxes keep raising. Yeah. Instead of just like a set rate like 10% or 30%. Why do they have to keep going up?
Well, this is a fundamental difference between the Republican and Democrat parties. The reason why you'd want to raise them is because you believe that will bring more revenue to the state that we could then use to fund crucial spending needs. Republicans, on the other hand, say if you don't raise it, you'll have a net more money in the first place, right? It's a math equation if you think about it. Republicans believe if you keep the rate low and consistent, the economy will grow and we'll get more money at a lower rate than we would if we raised it and kept it inconsistent. And if you want to know more, I'm happy to chat with you about that. But fundamentally, Republicans and Democrats disagree on this, and the Democrats are in control, and so they're voting their priorities, and their priorities are to raise them because they want more revenue. This gentleman right here in the hat has been waiting for a while.
Just a very quick question. You mentioned earlier that you're much more likely to read a personal email than a form letter.
Yeah.
On each bill in the upper right quadrant, there's a box that you can check to comment on this bill. Yeah. Who sees those comments?
Let's go pull up a bill, and let's pull it up. I don't know the technical answer to that. Just a second. I think what it does is it pulls up a subpage, and it either gives you an opportunity to specify where you are, and then it will help you email directly to your legislature, or it will send those comments to committee, and if you write those comments, the committee is supposed to add those documents into the official document tray that follow the bill around. So let's click comment on this bill. That's right there. Okay, so they're going to, what they're going to do is they're going to force you into a form that identifies what district you're in, and then you'll have the ability to make a comment that will then email your legislator and your two senators, or your senator. Yeah. Now, yes, I do. I don't respond to them necessarily as quick as you'd like, because if I'm negotiating budgets, I'm doing that, and we always follow up at some point. But now there's also a rule that we have, and if you, when you do this, you're going to get an option. You're going to get an option for who do you want the email to be, you know, in your to line of your email, who do you want it to be to, and then who do you want to copy? And you have 3 representatives. You have a senator and 2 reps. And you can specify each one of us individually, but you can only specify one of us as the main target of your email. So if, for example, you specify Emily Randall, and then you copy Representative Caldeira and I, then I'm going to let Emily Randall have the first crack at responding to you because you send it to her. And we operate the same way. If you send it to me, then I'm on point to go first, or if you send it to Caldeira, she's on point to go first. And usually, it's kind of how we've always operated, just as a matter of kind of protocol. Yeah. Okay, this gentleman, I know you've had a chance. I just want to give him, and then we're going to have to go because I got to get to Bremerton.
Hi, just more of a statement, listening to fixed income and property taxes. My folks live in Texas, and I'm here, of course. In Texas, age 65 and above, you pay 0 property taxes. And for disabled veterans, 100% disabled veterans, they also pay 0. Like the lady said here, you're taxed, you have to be impoverished, so you want your veterans and your old folks on the streets here before you'll give them an exemption, which doesn't sound right at all. If we get in the majority, it'd be nice to bring a bill that would talk to that same fact in Washington.
Absolutely. I'm happy to work on that. Not a problem. Okay. All right.
Mine is a comment.
All right.
I just want to thank you, Jesse, for working on the tolls on the bridge, on the Narrows Bridge, when no other legislator for years and years and years ever did it. And I really, well, I ran years ago, and that was one of the first things I was going to bring up. And when you got in there, that's what I appreciate so much, because I cross that bridge every day for work. So I really appreciate you doing that.
Thank you. Yeah. If you don't know, the tolls have not gone up since I've been in. I made that pledge, and we refinanced the bridge, what they said was impossible. We refinanced that in 2018. And if you don't know the current status on the bridge, the tolls can't go up except for a one-window opportunity, and that window starts next summer. And anybody guess how much they can raise the tolls? 25 cents. That's it. And if they do choose that option, they can't ever raise them again. So, and we're working on it right now. I'm trying to work. I don't even want it to go up 25 cents. I'd like to be able to leave. If by the time I leave this office, I want to say they never went up under my term. But in the safeguards that we got in that bill, the most they could ever go up between now and by the time the bridge is paid off.
Randy Boss, who's in here,
Oh yeah. Randy Boss did help me. Randy Boss, if you don't know, is on the Citizens Advisory Committee. He's appointed by the governor on the Narrows Bridge Task Force there. And yeah, I got a lot of intellectual capital from Randy when I came into office, because he'd been a leader on this issue for a long time. So thank you, Randy. In the context, the bridge is scheduled to be paid off between 2031 and 2032. The tolls won't go up. We've got the revenue to make sure we cover all the increasing debts that's coming down. And then what the best part about that bill that we got put in and re-edified in law was once those tolls are done, they're off. This is the only project in the state. The only project in the state where the state contributed $0 to the build out of the infrastructure. Toll payers here have had to pay for if you go to the Big Bertha Tunnel, you go to 520, any of the other tolling projects, the state contributed 30%. So I was adamant that the tolls come off, because we basically gifted the state a major infrastructure thing. And at the very least, once the tolls are paid off and the debt's done, they can take care of the maintenance on the bridge. So anyways, thank you all for coming. I really, really appreciate you being patient and taking time. Thank you.